Joining me as always, Nathan Bartleball. Nathan, what's going on, man?
Hey, not too much. We are in February,
Yeah.
and the year's already melting away again. It's already started again.
I know.
So far, so good. Seems like, of course, I thought things were so far so good last year too. We've had some upheaval, but I'm hopeful that we're hopefully on a road out of a lot of that, and seems like everyone's working towards getting everybody back in school, and we've got vaccines going and stuff like that. So I'm hopeful, and then things are going well here. How about you?
Yeah, things are good. You and I were just talking. I started at a new job shortly before Christmas break, and was into the throes of the 3 weeks before exams, trying to get the students. Trying myself to get caught up with where the students were, and then trying to get my students caught up with things. So finally finished that section of the midterms, and now moving into, okay, this is now officially my class. I'm teaching this material to them. So, better understanding of their knowledge base and where to go from here. So I'm really excited about that. You mentioned things hopeful for the year, but we're still not quite out of it. We're still in a season where we're really not going out and doing a whole lot. Might go out to eat every once in a while, but really, the main thing, at least in our house, is still the watching of stuff. And for better or worse, that's really where our main source of entertainment is coming from. And so, Nathan, you and I are going to take some time here and just, it's been a while since we've podcasted. Just talk about some of the things that we've been watching. There's been, a lot of good stuff, a lot of bad stuff that's come out. And so, we're just going to take some time here and talk about some of that stuff. But you and I were just talking. We've got an extended weekend here because of President's Day. Do you have any fun plans coming up?
Well, we've got some stuff going on for Valentine's Day with the kids and with us. I tried to mastermind a plan where one of these nights it's like, okay, guys, you can have a picnic in your room and we'll set up, you can camp out and we'll get you pizza and send you upstairs, and Mom and I are going to have dinner downstairs. And my daughter's all about it initially. My son, he's a little harder to convince. He's immediately like, wait, you don't want us to eat at the table like people? This is coming from the kid who I regularly find food crammed down in the edges of his bed and the edges of the couch. We have to constantly ask him to sit back at the table. Why are you wearing roller skates while you're eating your food? And now suddenly he cares about eating at the table with everybody. Says it in his best orphan voice.
Right.
You want me to eat in my room? No flowers in the attic. I don't. I just want you to. So when we were able to sell it a little bit more as like, hey, this is a fun hangout, and then when he was like, wait, did you say soda, video games, and pizza? Okay, never mind.
Right.
I just had, he actually says something like, Dad, I'm really sorry you can't have any alone time with Mom, but that's just how I feel. And I was like, okay, well, you just sealed your fate with that.
Right.
But all is good. Everybody's on board now. Maybe if this episode goes up this weekend, maybe we could also throw out our thoughts on what make good, good date movies. So because our concept of date movies or romantic movies might be very different from someone else. I'm going to recommend Dead Alive for everybody. So. But yeah. So it's the same thing, like you're saying. I think, and yes, when I say things are looking up, it's just simply that I don't. It's the moment where you're not falling closer. It's that moment in Star Wars where the trash compactor sides have stopped moving in on them.
Right.
They're not out of it yet. The walls have stopped moving. So hopefully, maybe that's where we are.
Right.
I'm trying to be as positive as I can.
Right.
But I do think that we are well into in terms of you're talking about people watching things at home and movies. I mean, theaters are still not back. I walked by the theater. They took the kids ice skating just recently. We walked by the AMC over here, and it's just like, I know it's open, but even if I went in to see something, I've watched all the movies that are showing because most of them are available via home too, but we're definitely in a different kind of world now, and a world that I don't think the lid is going to go back on, where in a month, we're all going to be able to watch King Kong versus Godzilla at home, the minute it releases. That's pretty cool. Disney was already on this path, but, things like WandaVision, they had a trailer. It's funny, the Super Bowl trailers now are for TV shows,
Yes.
Back in the day, you used to watch it to see what movies are coming out, and the handful of movies are like, who cares? But the trailer for, Winter Soldier, Falcon and Winter Soldier looked, and it doesn't look like a TV show. It doesn't look like Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Doesn't even look like The Flash, which is made leaps and bounds in terms of special effects stuff. It looks like a Marvel movie, The budget looks the same as a Marvel movie, things like that. My kids have gotten into reading Percy Jackson. We were reading about how Disney's pouring more money into the new Percy Jackson TV show that they're making than Star Wars or Marvel. So, we're in a very different place with things. We can, the Sundance Film Festival happened 2 weeks ago. There was a couple times when I was a critic, I got a pass and was invited to come, but it's in Salt Lake City and I couldn't take off from the job at the time. And now I was able to attend and watch about 10 movies because guess what? I could do it from right here.
Right.
So that has changed a lot and it's opened up a lot of options. So, I'm excited to talk about some of the things we've been watching. Maybe less so about others, but it'll still be fun to talk about them.
Yeah. As always. Yeah. No, and I agree with you completely. The reality is, Maryland is moving through rather quickly in its tiers of vaccinations and making sure, that those who want them are available to get them. And, I know that as teachers, Joy and I, we were able to get priority into getting shots. So, Joy and I had a discussion. She ended up getting the shot. I ended up not for, not for political reasons or not for being an anti-vaxxer or anything like that. We just had a talk, and a lot of it just kind of boiled down, in my opinion, to the benefits of it. And right now, there aren't going to be any short-term benefits to getting it, and so my thinking is, well, if there does become more benefits to getting the vaccination, then by the time that happens, it'll be more available, and I'll just be able to go in and get it. So I won't have to worry about all the stuff ahead of time. But she's gotten it and she's set to get her second round this week, actually, or next week, I should say. And so, that's definitely in play and in motion, not just here in Maryland, but around the nation and even around the world.
So when you say benefits, when you say you didn't see the benefits, or like, what do you mean specifically?
So you still have to follow the quarantine and isolation procedures at school if you come in contact with someone who has COVID. Like it's not like, oh, you've got the vaccination and so you can still come in and teach because you have the vaccination. It's, well, you got the vaccination, but you came in contact. We really don't know enough about the vaccination and what it does, and so we still need you to stay home and quarantine for the 14 days. So,
okay. I wasn't sure if you were talking about they were waiting for them to give away a free DVD or something.
No, yeah.
I wasn't trying to figure out. I was like, outside of not getting COVID, what benefits are we discussing?
Yeah, no. The benefits are just kind of like, we're still, we'd still be required to wear a mask. We'd still need to quarantine for the 14 days if we became exposed to someone who had it. All of the procedures of that we've been following thus far are still in force. And so for me, I'm looking at it and I'm like, I really, I hate lines anyway. And, so for me to go and wait in line, I'm just like,
you sound like me. It's like, I'll take COVID.
Yeah. I mean, and again, it's just, if down the road, my administrator comes to us and he says, okay, so if you've had the vaccine, you don't need to wear your mask and you don't need to quarantine anymore and all of those things, then I'll be like, okay, yeah, I'll go get it, but until that comes, I'm just like, if I get it, I get it. If I don't, I don't. It's fine. So
yeah, we'll get it. My wife is working with the school, so she's on tap to get it. I am not at this point. I don't know when we'll go back. I will get it when it is available. Mm-hmm. But but at least
Yeah.
it's in progress. At
It
least
is.
we're a very different place than
Yeah, very different place than we were. I mean, even 2 months ago. So no, it'll be good, and like you said, I think we'll start to see things opening up again, and restrictions will start to be lifted, and I think we'll start to see people out and about. It's kind of hard to tell, to be honest with you, because normally our Maryland winters are fairly mild, and we've gotten a decent amount of snow so far. There's
more
actually
than we have, because last year
Yeah.
we literally got none.
Yeah. And so this year, I think, we're up to over a foot of total accumulation of snow. And so, I'm looking out the window here and I see the snow still on the ground. We're expected to get some flurries today and tomorrow. And so, I think that's contributed to people not really being out and around as well. Winter tends to shut people in a little more. So, hopefully as we enter into the spring season, we'll start to see a very different scene than, this kind of post-apocalyptic thing we've been seeing over the past year. So, yeah. But on to movies and things like that we've been watching. Nathan, you and I have not talked about WandaVision once. And so I want to get a chance to talk to you. Episode 6 dropped yesterday. Had an opportunity to see that. I know you said you got caught up. So let's talk a bit about WandaVision. And I want to go back to, what were your initial thoughts through the trailers and stuff leading up to the release? Was this something you were looking forward to, or was this something that you were like, I'll see what happens with it? What were your initial thoughts before it even released and dropped?
Well, honestly, I was interested in it because it did look different, right? The trailers I had seen really only seemed to focus on the I Love Lucy sort of style. They're in a 1950s sort of sitcom world.
Yeah.
And you see the Wanda and Vision are there despite, again, I think we have to talk a little bit of spoilers of the Marvel Universe to be able to even talk about WandaVision. It's the kind of show that it's not really like a one-off. It's building something sort of, cumulatively, and it seems like it's doing stuff to affect the Marvel Universe. So all I would say is, we'll try to keep the spoilers low initially, but it'll be hard to. We'll probably have to stop and issue some kind of spoiler warning, just talk about a couple of things that happened.
Yeah.
But what I'm referring to are things that have happened in the previous Marvel movies. So if you haven't seen the Avengers films and in the previous Marvel movies, I am going to mention things that happen there because they play immediately into what's happening in Wanda and Vision. Spoilers commence. Obviously, Vision is technically dead, or was technically dead up until we see him in the show. So I was curious about how they were going to do that, how they were going to spin it, and the fact that that we're talking about half-hour episodes, and that those trailers had a very light kind of tone to them. I'm thinking, well, we didn't leave these characters in a light place, so what's going on?
Yeah.
I will say that if you are a comic book reader and a more recent comic book reader, then you probably might have already had an idea based on some of the storylines that have been playing out in the comics in regards to the Scarlet Witch, to Wanda Maximoff. So, long story short, I thought it looked interesting, and you and I have talked many times about how I'm always wanting to see Marvel kind of mix it up a little bit and just make a movie that's of a slightly different subgenre than their every single superhero movie. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
A lot of people didn't really like the recent, I know it wasn't MCU, but a lot of people didn't really like the recent New Mutants movie. When I finally got around to seeing it, I didn't think it was that bad. I kind of enjoyed that they tried to go a different route. In that case, they tried to do almost like a Breakfast Club meets horror, kind of thing.
Yeah.
Did I think it was great? No, but I do think that taking more shots like that, taking more attempts to kind of mix up the subgenres does work. When they went and made Ant-Man more of a comedy, that's that sort of thing. So with WandaVision, I know some people were initially maybe put off by the first couple episodes, because comparatively to Marvel stories, after an hour of anything, we've seen at least 5 or 6 things blow up. And there certainly wasn't any of that. My initial feelings were, this is more like The Truman Show or Pleasantville or something like that. And I'll get your reactions first before I continue. But I was honestly pleasantly surprised because while I agree that nothing maybe deeply exciting happened in the first two episodes, it did sort of set up the idea that this is actually, there's an interesting idea here. I picked up some of the comic book references they were making about where the storyline might go. I thought that they were doing it in a very unique way, and it was just different.
Yeah, for me, the first two or three episodes, I actually wasn't very interested in. It wasn't, I think, until the fourth episode that it got me going, and not because I wasn't sure of it. I was sure of where they were going with it, and I wanted them to get there. I think for me that was part of it. The first one was kind of like, oh, this is fun, and the second one was like, okay, I'm getting done with this. And then by the time they got to the end of the third one, that's where I said, okay, I think it's going to get better, in my opinion, next week. And it did. It got to where I wanted it to go, where I knew it was going to go. For me, I was just rather disappointed with it at the beginning, and I remember talking with different people about it and them asking me, and I remember thinking like back to The Mandalorian and how good that first episode was, and thinking, it set the tone right away for the show. And I just felt like this was a little weaker comparatively. I felt a little disappointed, like I said, just in terms of, the pacing and all of that. And so by the time, but I knew where it was going to go, and so I stuck with it and really have been enjoying it since, like I said, since about the fourth episode. But that was just my thoughts on it, and I was really excited for it when it was when I was seeing the trailers for it. And again, it was one of those things where I kind of knew where they were going to end up heading to a certain extent. And the things that they were going to do, but seeing the trailers, I felt like, okay, they're trying to throw it off and play up this aspect a little more, but they ended up, in my opinion, just taking a little too long with it to get there. But now I do believe it is fantastic, and I've been enjoying seeing how this world is unfolding and how they're bringing all of these elements together. I don't think it's anything of a huge spoiler to say that this is in some way supposed to tie into the new Doctor Strange movie that will be coming out, and so I'm very fascinated and interested to see what's going to happen with that and what they're going to do with that. So, yeah, those were just some of my initial thoughts on it. But since it's really gotten going, I've the new episode dropped yesterday. Joy and I were home, and I was like, let's put it in. I want to see what's going to happen. So I've really enjoyed it since, like I said, since about the fourth episode. So.
Yeah, it's funny. My kids are basically, since The Mandalorian stopped, like when The Mandalorian every, Friday, it wasn't, it's the weekend. It's like, new Mandalorian today. And then, we went from there. We were watching, when The Mandalorian had ended, they were watching the Dark Materials over on Max. And then we were like, okay, when that ended, WandaVision started up. So now it's like, Guess what Friday is? It's so... well, a couple things. Yeah, I will say this. I do agree that at the end of the first two episodes, I wasn't feeling the like the frustration or the let's get it moving. I did feel that at the end of the third episode. I agree with you. I do think that they maybe took, again, these are only half-hour episodes, but I do think because they wouldn't have taken this much time had it been a movie. Yeah. And I'm not sure, except to sort of just linger in the world, which is a fine thing to do, like a comic book would do this, to linger in the world, another episode for 30 minutes and kind of build the atmosphere. They could do that, but there's a kind of, and I see kind of why they did, but I think that the character they introduced in the third episode could have been moved to the second episode, because I do think that they maybe went just one episode too long before revealing what to me and to everybody was most likely at least a very obvious end game. So I do think that like this is the minor spoilers, but it's hard to even set up the show without talking the minor spoilers. And I think that may be what you're getting at, Nathan, is the minute this show starts, it opens like a 1950 sitcom, down to the commercials, down to the opening, down to the lines, the canned laughter. And we all know watching this that that's not what's really going on. I mean, you'd have to be silly to think that Disney decided to make a 50 sitcom with just, Vision and Wanda there. And it's very clear, 2 or 3 minutes in that that's not what's happening. The obvious thing is we've watched enough comic book movies, even if you're not familiar with some of the storylines that inspired us, that there's artificial reality things going on or something to that effect, right? We know that someone's messing with reality. We know this isn't just a cute way to present the show. And so you're right. We get this slow reveal of this as if we are watching something like the Truman Show, where that information might not be immediate, or the Matrix, where we slowly realize it's not the real world. Those movies revealed what was going on in such a way that you maybe didn't know, but here we know right up front. We've seen enough of these kind of things. So to kind of string it along as the characters slowly become aware, you do get a little anxious, not anxiety anxious, but you're ready for them to kind of pick it up. Like, okay, let's get to that reveal. Let's get to that moment where you peel it back. So again, just for the setup, if anyone who's listening and maybe doesn't know, we do have the Scarlet Witch and Vision, who were kind of forming a strong kind of romantic bond in the Avengers stories until Thanos and the Infinity War sort of intervened, and we left Vision, who he's a composite of a couple different things. One of them is the Infinity Stone that was lodged in his head was torn out by Thanos. He originally, Paul Bettany's voice has been in the show, or been in the Marvel universe since the very beginning of what we think of as the MCU that began with Iron Man, because he was the voice of Jarvis from that very first movie. So it's weird because he seems relative, like he came in rather late, but in reality, Bettany's been there since the beginning of Stark and all of that. Yeah. So then he was a composite of both Jarvis and the traits of the Infinity Stone, and so which is a little bit of a different take than the Vision from the comic books, who kind of had a human baseline and everything, but and then Wanda, as the Scarlet Witch, it seems clear that she's more aware of what's happening than Vision is. Yes. Vision seems mostly, he'll go to work and people make canned comments, and then suddenly someone will have what approaches in a mental breakdown. Yes. And this keeps happening throughout the episodes, and the neighbors, Catherine Hahn's character, who Agnes. She doesn't even have a last name. She'll come in, and you're never really sure what her agenda is. You get the feeling that she's more aware than some of the others, and you don't know, particularly early on, is she initiating this? We have a scene where a character crawls up out of the sewer and there's bees swarming around, and then people are on, you get on the internet and you're trying to text to figure out, a Marvel character has bees. Right. Although we do see an insignia that when I saw it, I recognized it, and I don't want to get too much into what that is. But I was like, okay, there's something we can kind of work with. So even by the end of the 2 episodes, we have another group. It's not S.H.I.E.L.D., it's not Hydra, but a third group. And that moment, you're like, okay, I see where they're going, but when will they get there? And then you have them in this reality. One of the things I do enjoy about the episodes is that every episode so far, and this might have been why they bothered to throw a third episode in there, is every episode so far represents a different decade of TV. Right. And in representing a different decade of TV, every episode represents a different decade of the world, And so we have that world of the 50s in the very first episode, and you get the laugh track, and it really feels like an I Love Lucy or a Honeymooners or something like that. Kind of show. And then you have that one disturbing scene, though, where the boss starts to kind of convulse and shake and fall on the ground. And so it's kind of twofold, because it feels like I Love Lucy, and then it feels like that episode of The Twilight Zone where that little boy has everyone trapped in the farmhouse. Right. I think it's called It's a Good Life. And then that's the first thought that, okay, maybe there's something like this is going on. Is there one mind who's sort of controlling all this? And is that, and then, future episodes are asking the question, is that one mind Wanda? And she doesn't even seem to be really sure. And of course, then you've got kind of the Brady Bunch, and things like that. And you get to the 70s, and then we get to, I think, where you're saying the show kind of picks up, when it kind of finally says, okay, we can't string people along any longer.
Right. Yeah.
And I think one of the problems is in this first 3 episodes, we aren't really getting any Wanda and Vision are so sort of disconnected. They're out of their element, and they don't really know exactly what's going on. And they're running through the tropes of the shows. So, they're the couple that sleep in separate beds in the first few episodes, and then by the Brady Bunch one, they're making all gee shucks comments about things and stuff like that. But they aren't interacting a lot, I don't think, and that's part of the problem. It's not like in lieu of moving the story forward, we're watching Wanda and Vision have character development, because we don't really get that either, not in those early episodes. They're just running through the motion. So I agree. There's not a lot of it kind of sets the world up, and it just kind of plays on that note for a couple episodes.
Yeah. Yeah. No. And again, like in saying all this, it does, it's not that it's not that what they're doing is bad. It's just particularly if you know where it's supposed to go and what's supposed to happen, and, things that are going to unfold. It does, again, like you said, by that 3rd episode, you're just, okay, what are you, where are you going with this? Where are you going with this?
Although one could argue that there is obviously now there's a very specific feeling of being trapped, so those first few episodes, lingering in that world and seeing the disconcerting nature of it, certainly I think helps you feel sort of trapped alongside the characters.
Right.
You're really ready for it. And then I think that it has been intentional. So let's, I think we'd have to move to spoilers, I would say, to really talk about episodes 4 and 5, or 4, 5, and 6, right? Is that where we are now?
Yeah, we're on episode
that's the
6
problem. When they're half-hour episodes,
I know.
Even though we have to watch them singularly, when I go back to think about them, it really is. That's one thing I want to mention about the difference. You mentioned Mandalorian, how Mandalorian was like hot the minute it dropped in terms of like the quality. I think the difference here is that I don't know what you think, and I'd be surprised if it like WandaVision doesn't seem like it's been designed to be an ongoing TV series, or if it is, it will not be the same TV series it is right now next season. If that makes sense.
Yeah. No, I agree with you. I think
whereas Mandalorian felt like it was trying to start a franchise, like restart a franchise, really. To start. This is going to be the Disney, Star Wars on TV, right? And so it was going to be this ongoing thing. We had to feel enough investment to be with this guy on adventures that are pretty episodic. Right. And the difference with WandaVision, and I think what's cool is when we get the 4th episode, you realize that this is less about trying to establish Wanda and Vision as a kind of a mainstay of the Marvel universe. Not that they won't be around, but I'm less convinced that, at least so far, that this is really about giving them their own show we're going to watch for 7 seasons, as it is to find a way to kind of align and grandfather in all of the other pieces of the MCU that Marvel has finally gotten their hands on again. But how do we do this without making with COVID and everything being what it is? How do we align all these pieces so we can use them without making another 5 standalone movies?
Yeah, and I think that is a good point to bring up, is that I agree. I don't know if we do get another season of this. I don't, and you're right, I don't know that we would. This could just be, as you're saying, something that is, bridging the gap. And, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. tried to do this in a couple of their episodes, with particularly more early on in the MCU universe, where they would bring in these characters from the cinema, and they tried to bridge through some of this stuff. Particularly back when Winter Soldier came out, I remember Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., they would be playing an episode of the TV series, and then they would cut to parts of the movie so that they could try to show you in parallel what was going on. And so I think if this is going to be more their pattern, let's let's use this to set up our next staging of movies where you're right. Let's not plan on 7 seasons, but let's plan on one season that's going to bridge this gap, and then we'll see where it goes from there. I think that would be a better approach if that's what they're indeed doing.
Yeah, I feel like this is, when we talk in a few minutes about this, I think it's gonna be a case where this is the quirky kind of offbeat thing that maybe is intended to get the people that are more like me, although I do enjoy comic book heroes and stuff, who maybe want more of that weird sci-fi kind of quirky element, who don't really care about seeing superheroes punch each other. That's one way to maybe draw them into the Marvel universe a little bit, because you have to wonder. It's funny. A friend of mine had posted, says, yeah, but my kids don't know anything about 50s television, so I have to constantly explain to them what's happening, So it's
right.
Like, who is this for? Why? I still haven't completely figured out why that's happening, in terms of both from a creative perspective and from Wanda, if she is who she is she's old. Is she old enough to really be that immersed? I guess we are, same thing. But I'm curious why that's happening, whether that is integral to the storyline or not. Why, and which makes me wonder. We do know that someone is. I guess again, this is where spoilers go in. We know now that this is a bubble, in a sense, a psychic bubble or some sort of bubble that is over this particular town, and that it is in our reality, in a sense, in that there's a space where this town was,
yes,
and theoretically still is. But then what I love about this is now we're trying to figure out, well, who is controlling it, and all signs point to Wanda. But I think we all kind of and certainly there is a Marvel comic storyline called House of M that came out in like 2005. I don't know if you're familiar with it, but it revolves around Wanda creating a reality because she is kind of having an emotional breakdown. In that storyline, it's because of the loss of children, not the loss of her significant other, her husband in this case.
Right.
I don't think she and Vision are married but she has configured him as her husband in all of these episodes that we've seen, if she's the one doing the configuring. But I do have to wonder whether or not this is entirely Wanda,
right. And I think I think we get some hints of that as well, that, what's going on here, because
he's not entirely sure. We get the feeling that if it is her, she's almost got a little bit, not of a dark phoenix, but she's got this element where her grief or whatever it is may be configuring this. But there does seem to be, as the episodes go forward, the possible suggestion that maybe somebody else externally, which would be a great way to bring in another villain. And there's a couple that immediately spring to mind that they've not introduced before, that could be doing this. And that may explain more why there's a TV flourish. There might be something in that character's psyche that explains why we're marching them from the 50s through now, and it gets more fun spotting the references to the shows as the episodes go, because for those of us, like I didn't grow up, I saw lots of the 50s and 60s and 70s television because they were still airing them pretty regularly,
right.
On television. Even before Nick at Night and stuff like that, they would be on the regular TV pretty much during the day. So, but when you get to like the 4th episode, is it the 4th or the 5th? It's the 5th episode where it looks like Full House, and like it's like a mix of Full House and is it like Family Ties?
Yeah.
Kind of perfectly merged, because Jen says, I was like, this is Full House. And she's like, no, it's Family Ties. And we're like, well, look, there's the Family Ties part. There's the Full House where they're running through the yard with the overhead camera zipping in. I was like, and then the twins. And, suddenly they now have kids, and these kids are growing exponentially like through the episode. But a couple things I wanted to discuss there is what I do like is when you get like, it's kind of nice that you have these 3 episodes, because it builds a standard for thinking, okay, this is what the show is. And then the 4th episode comes in and kind of peels that back immediately, because the end of the 3rd episode, we see a person literally chucked outside, and we realize there's a bubble. We realize that this isn't an alternate reality. Vision and Wanda aren't laying on a bed somewhere strapped up to wires. This is an anomaly happening in the Marvel universe. And then for that 4th episode to start with a thing I didn't consider, which is, what does it look like when people come back from the blip?
Right. Yeah.
As Spider-Man coined it. We never saw that. It dawned on me only in that moment. We never saw what it would look like for all of those people to return at once. And no kidding, it's complete chaos.
Right.
You're in a hospital, and suddenly people who haven't been around for 5 years start popping in. And that was a great way to suddenly remind you, no, this is Marvel. This is still the Marvel universe. This is still the Marvel show. Still the Marvel characters that you love. And then, with no surprise, in a few minutes, we're bringing in some side characters, which that's what I really like. And if WandaVision continues, I'd almost want WandaVision to be more like, there were always those comic titles when you were a kid, and Marvel had several of them. Sometimes it'd be like Strange Tales or something like that, where you would get to see some of your favorite side characters who didn't have their own comic, or weren't that popular, like Cloak and Dagger and people like that. They would get to come in and, rub shoulders with the other superheroes, but in like one-off stories,
Yes.
When some of these characters, even get characters like Ghost Rider, when they were less popular, they would, or Morbius the Vampire, they would be able to pop into these little side stories. And so there was always a comic where that could happen. And WandaVision, if it goes forward, I'd almost think it would be cool if WandaVision was that kind of show, not a show where Wanda and Vision are strictly the main deal all the time, but like a repository, almost like, where characters can pop in for one-off or one-season little storyline, and it's a way to kind of keep filtering the Marvel universe through, so you keep thinking about these people, in a way that the movies can't do. So in here we get the Randall Park character from Ant-Man, the agent that was always kind of tracking him down, who was always making sure he was still in house arrest.
Yep.
And he's a lot of fun. And then we also bring back, what's her name?
Darcy.
Darcy. I was trying to think of the actress's name, though.
Kat Dennings.
Thank you, Kat Dennings. And they bring her in, and it helps you remember, hey, Ant-Man and Thor are still out there. But then at the same time, it gives these characters a little more agency than they had, no pun intended, than they had before. Now they're a part of SWORD here, in a sense, not directly, but they get to be a part of this story. And you see them, they aren't like just the Kat Dennings still sort of is just the like snarky comic relief, but right. I kind of like what they're doing with Park's agent, though, because he is really like particularly as we're getting into these episodes, he's starting to come into his own a little bit. Yes. He isn't just the guy that Ant-Man has to like make a mockery of. Right. He's getting to be his own hero in the story, in a sense, not the main character, but. And so that's, I think, what I really am liking about WandaVision is you've got now they should have introduced sooner the parallel of this is what's happening inside the structured universe, and this is what's happening outside in the world. So what did you think about that episode?
Yeah, no, I thought that's when things really started coming together, like that fourth episode. By the end of the third, you knew that that's where they were going to take it. Because of the events that happened. And so the fourth is where they really start exploring, okay, what's going on? What are the factors that are contributing to all this? And so you start to see this parallel journey of what's going on inside the TV series and all of that, what's, Wanda's head, whatever's going on, which we really still don't know. As you said, Nathan, we really don't know fully everything that's going on. We know that Wanda is to an extent aware of these events, but we don't know to what extent she's aware. We know that she can control certain things, but we don't know to what extent she can control certain things. We got a preview in this past week that some of the characters that are actually involved in this world with her are doing her bidding to a certain extent. So she's not exactly controlling everything. There are others who are doing things for her. And so we saw some of that. And so, we still haven't seen fully what's going on, but that fourth episode really started to show us the parallel of, the agents are watching this as we're watching it. We go through these first three episodes thinking that they're going to stumble upon it, but they stumble upon it, which we find out in the fourth episode, live. And so, they plug in and tune into it as it happens. And that was something that was kind of fascinating to see, and watch, what everybody outside of this thing is doing. So yeah, I did. That's really when I started enjoying. Okay, what are all these things? What's going on with all these things? And then, I think it was episode 5 where Wanda becomes aware that she is being probed and monitored. People are observing her, and she kind of makes an entrance into the world, which was dynamite. I mean, you see her in her anger and grief, and there's a reference made again to, she could have taken out Thanos on her own if he hadn't, rained down that attack. So I think all of these things, like you said, they're incorporating the world and the universe into them. And this is where I think they're doing as good of a job as The Mandalorian, is that they're not forgetting their history. They're not forgetting their background.
Both in the cinematic Marvel universe and in the comic book Marvel universe. And
exactly.
I think that's what's important is if you are a comic book fan and you've read House of M and some of these other stories, and let's talk about another character we did mention because we've been kind of focused on the ones we already knew. I mean, there aren't really a lot of brand new characters because the people inside the world, as you pointed out, there's almost a Star Trek or Twilight Zone kind of thing going on where these people are slaves or puppets, even now. And even the last episode, a kind of poignant thing where Vision walks to the edges of the world where it seemed to be the least realized in sense of that everything close to Wanda seems to have its own agency and can think. And like you said, they ask her sometimes, well, what was my line? Or did I do this right? Or do you want me to change something?
Right.
There's a lot of agency and detail fleshed out with the people who are close to them. But then when Vision, we'll probably talk a little bit more in a minute, when Vision he takes a walk on Halloween night, and as he gets to the edges of the town, those people have far less definition, but they're still real people. Like it becomes clear that whoever's doing this overwriting is overwriting it on real people. And so you've got people standing at the edge of their house where, like imagine a video game where the guy in the background, all I'm supposed to do is move his pumpkin from one side of the porch to the other. This guy is doing that consistently and has been doing that for as many weeks as this has been going on.
Yeah.
And they're crying. They can't get out. And you have a lady who's trying to pin something to like a ghost, and she's frozen in that moment. And I suspect it's because the background characters don't need so much detail. So whoever's doing this hasn't bothered to make them anything else than pins, pin into ghost or whatever,
right.
or moves pumpkin. And so that was kind of terrifying to see. I think that was maybe the creepiest moment of the show so far, when you realize that to the edge of town, what happens when you're a player in a TV show, that's all well and good if you're one of the stars or the supporting cast. But what if you're trapped in a TV show and all you do is you're the mailman and you walk from one side to the next? These people don't even have that. So I thought that was interesting and creepy. But Monica Rambeau, who's kind of the new, I would say probably the new character that we're supposed to pay the most attention to.
Yes.
And she's not even new because we met her once before, just not like this. And she's played by Tiana Paris. She is, she shows up in the 3rd episode as kind of mystery woman. And then we find out who she is. Her mom passes while she's in the blip because she's blipped away. Mm-hmm. And there was an interesting reference when someone said to her, I think in the newest episode, says, you know what? People who were gone for 5 years had it kind of easy. You have no idea what it was like in that span of time, both to be an agent of one of these big power groups that are trying to, keep things running, and half of everybody's gone,
Right.
But when she comes back, she's missed her mother's death because 5 years have gone,
Yes.
She was with her mother in the hospital. She thought everything was fine. It was fine. But then, guess what? Cancer came back in the 5 years in which she was gone. But she was in Captain Marvel. She was just a little girl in Captain Marvel. She was, because Carol Danvers' friend in Captain Marvel film, Rambeau, her daughter that had would run back and forth kind of in a few scenes there and talk to them when they were kind of on the run. Like, this is her grown up. So and in the comic books, again, possible spoiler, but in the comics, she eventually becomes a character known as Spectrum.
Yes.
Like a superhero. And she actually, Spectrum is kind of, in the comic book world, the second Captain Marvel.
Yeah.
So she's, I guess, probably in the same way in which the cinematic universe has sort of suggested that Falcon is kind of taking the mantle of Captain America, but not really. You know, he's still
Right.
Falcon.
Well, and the other thing that I found interesting is we're understanding a little bit of the world that these people came back into. Like you said, we actually saw them materialize, but this is the episode 2 where in that same statement, you know, one of these head guys kind of reveals that the superheroes aren't beloved and trusted anymore like they once were. That the blip seems to have done something where they've lost their faith and confidence in him, because he makes this kind of snarky off-the-cuff reference of, you know, well, I know your good friend's Captain Marvel and blah, blah, blah. But like you seem to get this feeling that, you know, the world has changed and superheroes are at fault. At least from this one person's perspective.
Well, and you've had that kind of all the way through, like even after the first Avengers, even when all they had was the Battle of New York. You remember that we were constantly watching the fallout, and then what happened in Sokovia. And we should, I realize we're already at 9 o'clock. We're already well into this, and we were still talking about Wanda, but. So we kind of wrap that up, but I think we've seen that's constantly been a theme with William Hurt's Thunderbolt Ross character.
Yeah.
You know, and all the events of Civil War, everything that's happened with Wanda and Vision, you know, so that's probably only deepened here where, you know, there's people out there probably saying, look, we were right. At the same time, I think people like Ross and others understand now that without these people, all we have are things that are worse.
Yeah.
You know, we have a Thanos, we have these things. I think some of those guys that were early on skeptical aren't, because this is kind of the devil we know.
Right. Yeah.
And so, but now you've got this second tier of people. This is the people coming in behind Shield and others coming in behind and saying, oh, you know, we're still not convinced. You know, there's always going to be that government contingent. So the thing is, Fox is now sort of, they were holding on to a lot of titles for a while that Marvel never could get a hold of, right?
Yes.
And so that's why I think WandaVision seems to be the most important, because honestly, a lot of these things I saw coming, or I was like, oh, that makes sense. There was something happened at the end of the 5th episode I truly didn't see coming at all. Like when it happened. Now, and actually it was kind of interesting because I had just it was so tired, because usually the end of Fridays when we watch it, so I'm usually exhausted, and we sat down and I had nodded off for just a second, and I opened my eyes just in time to see her answer the door.
Yeah.
And she answers the door, and she's been making references to her brother Pieter, who is Quicksilver. Yep. And of course we know that in the MCU universe, when they introduce these two, that Scarlet Witch and Quicksilver are mutants. They're also the children of Magneto, comic book wise. Yep. They didn't do that in the Avengers, or at least they didn't mention it in the MCU because they couldn't. They didn't have the rights to use those things. And of course, at the same time, Fox is like, well, we're going to go ahead and make, they did Days of Future Past, which introduced an alternate Quicksilver, who is the son of Magneto and who recognizes that fact. And honestly speaking, I liked him better.
Right.
Mostly because they took the time to establish his speed. They did something closer to what you would see in the Flash, where the world slows down for him, and the perspectives were better. Not that Aaron Taylor Johnson was bad. And it's funny, there was a Kick-Ass reference in last night's episode, and both Evan Peters, who plays the Quicksilver in the Fox series and the X-Men series, and Aaron Taylor Johnson, they were both in Kick-Ass together. So, because I think Wanda even pauses and says Kick-Ass out loud. And he kind of repeats it. I was like, yeah, we got it, guys. Thanks. But Evan Peters answers the door. So the other Quicksilver answers the door from the Fox universe. So people are sitting there wondering, how are they going to fold the X-Men in? Not that this is folding the X-Men in, but why does he look like that? Right. And then Kat Dennings literally says, wait, she recast him.
Yeah.
She recast him. And so no coincidence. Plus, Evan Peters, who's getting a little bit older now than the last time we saw him, he's developing a kind of a Kevin Bacon feel. Did you get that?
Yes, I did. Yeah, definitely. No, his portrayal of it was,
and not just the way he
great.
Looks, but and because again Friday night, so I spend at least half these episodes with my eyes closed, trying to not fall asleep. Yeah. Hearing his voice, he even sounds like Kevin Bacon a little bit, but he has that young Kevin Bacon, like Footloose era kind of feel, and he's a lot of fun. And then Malcolm in the Middle seems like it was the inspiration for last night episode. And I love the Halloween thing. I loved everything he did. It was my favorite episode so far.
Yeah.
So I do wonder, is this going to be a way to fold that? Because he talks about, like, he recognizes he's not the same. Like, I get the feeling that Evan Peters may actually be I don't think, like we were saying, I don't think this is just a joke intended for the people who watch the show.
Right.
This isn't an Easter egg. I think this might be the same way that eventually DC, through the Arrowverse, as they call it, introduced the concept of the multiverse. You know, Marvel has its own multiverse too. And is this the way? I think it probably is, that they grandfather in their X-Men characters. Will it be through the multiverse?
Yeah. And I think that's fair, because one of the things that we're noticing, particularly with this introduction of Pietro, is that he seems to be, interestingly, more conscious and aware of things that are going on. He knows something's up.
Yeah. Because he asked her, he's like, well, I asked the same thing to you. And he knows that, and he's even said, look, I don't remember a whole lot. I know that I woke up and I got shot like a chump in the street.
Right.
but in reality, that character, and they even show that as, like, to catch you up to what happened last week, they're not trying to pretend like he wasn't ever Aaron Taylor Johnson. They show clips of Aaron Taylor Johnson getting shot and killed.
Yes.
And the other thing I want to mention that we didn't mention is that something else is, okay, is Vision just a part of her illusion or her mind? But we know that she took Vision's body, so there's a very likely chance that Vision is Vision, that they have someone somewhere has found a way to restore him. So I'm interested in that. So it seems like that this element is a way to bring in the concept of the X-Men, right? Look at the way the military is acting, like you were saying, lots of distrust, greater than it's previously been. You've got this character. They seem like on the cusp of introducing the whole X-Men kind of storyline, and now we have an actual X-Men, at least from the other franchise, who's popped over here. I'm not saying that when Marvel introduces X-Men that they'll necessarily make them all the same characters from the show, but I mean, honestly speaking, there's still a lot of latitude, I think, for those characters, and the Fox franchise was doing a pretty good job of killing it. The last movie I saw, and not killing it in the positive sense, killing it in we're beating it to death. Ironically, only a few days before they had the episode that introduced the Evan Peters Quicksilver, I had watched for the first time, because on Max, Dark Phoenix with the kids, and it was terrible.
Yeah.
The last X-Men movie. But I mean, does this open the door for Michael Fassbender coming into the MCU?
Yeah.
It might.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it certainly could. Heck, even Patrick Stewart, maybe, if we're lucky. But
right.
But so the last thing I do want to talk about for as Wanda's Vision is concerned. So we know that the X-Men, that's one property they got back. There's another property they got back that I think everybody, because of how badly it's been treated over the years, is really excited for, which is the Fantastic Four.
Yes.
And I bring this up because, would you agree, Nathan, that there's been a ridiculous amount of discussion, I think, I mean ridiculous, but there's the Chekhov smoking gun thing, which you don't introduce a gun in Act 1 or, if you're not going to use it by Act 3.
Yes.
So there's been a lot of discussion about Rambeau being a part of the space program.
Yep.
A lot, and she's been grounded. She can't go back. There's been some discussion even in this last episode, this idea that this anomaly is getting so big and it's starting to spiral out in such a way that they're going to probably have to find another way to diffuse it. It isn't necessarily going to be just one, now the military are inside the bubble.
Right.
And so it's becoming almost cosmic. And I'm just wondering, there's been references to space flight and things like that. I wonder if we're not really, maybe we won't get full introduction to the X-Men in the series. I wonder if we couldn't get Reed Richards, though.
Yeah, and to me that would be that would be great, because I know a lot of people have had so many issues with the Fantastic Four. I really enjoyed the two movies that were done back in, the early
the 2005 and 2007 movies. Those were the ones that most people know that, who was it? Jessica Alba,
Ian Gofford,
and who else?
Chris Evans.
Yeah, I forgot Chris Evans was in it too.
And Michael Chiklis.
I said to treat it terribly. I mean, my problem is, though, I think that the Fantastic Four are actually some of Marvel's best characters. It doesn't maybe look that way but if you ever read the comic books, I think they really are. And the only thing I would say about the movies, I think those two movies are fine. I'm thinking more about the Roger Corman massacre thing that was in the 90s. There was no one even attempted to make a real movie.
Yeah.
And honestly, the Corman movie I'd rather watch than that really horrible, I thought, awful version they made. One of the few movies I ever walked out of just because I didn't see a reason to stay.
Yeah.
Was the Fantastic Four they made in 2015.
Yeah.
And when I finally caught up with it, I realized I only had about 20 minutes of the movie left.
Yeah.
I mean, I had a great cast. There was no reason that movie shouldn't have been good, and I thought it was terrible.
Yeah.
But
no, I agree as well.
I would agree with you that the two you're talking about are not they remain very much in that frame of mind. We were still a few years off. We were getting the first Batman. Batman Begins came out around the same time. We were just a few years off from getting the Iron Man and all of that. Yep. And they were still in the mindset that comic book movies are for kids. So they're kids' movies.
Yes.
They are kids' movies. And that might be the worst thing you could say about them. I think they're fine, but they're kids' movies. Yeah.
No, I agree. And I mean, I think that, that bringing something in like this would be a fantastic idea. No pun intended here. But I think it really would be a great idea to start introducing, but doing it right. Because like you said, that 2015 movie that came out was to me, it was just garbage. I mean,
and I don't even though I don't love comic book movies, I usually don't think that they're just complete garbage, but I thought that one was.
Right. I mean, to me, it just seemed like we're going to take everything we've established within this universe and we're just going to go full DC dark and brooding with it. And not only that, but I mean, you've got Doctor Doom, popping heads like zits, as he's walking down the hallways. I mean, it set a horrible, horrible tone for the DC universe. It was shot very dark.
Universe.
The Marvel universe. Yeah, sorry. The Marvel universe.
The DC was probably pretty happy that it was so
right.
bad.
Right. Guys, we have some wiggle room here. Let's do it right now. But I really felt like it took the whole tone of what they were doing with the franchise, with all these different setups, and it did away with it. It was like, let's try something new. It seems to work, and it's like, no, it doesn't work for this group. Now, on the reverse side of things, we've got Morbius coming out at some point. That looks like a darker movie, but I'm excited for that because I think it's appropriate to the story. Fantastic Four is not meant to be dark. Not on that level.
And if you are going to go that way, you kind of have to commit to it. My issue wasn't even that it was dark, although they were definitely trying for that. But they had no intention to commit to even that. Yeah. At least in the 2005 and 2007 movies, they committed to that gee whiz, just a little to the left of 60s Batman. You know what I mean?
Right.
They were making a kids' comedy. My kids have watched them and enjoyed them. I mean, they weren't, and some of those things were very good. I mean, I think one of the whole reasons we have a Chris Evans Captain America is because of Chris Evans Human Torch. You know what I mean? Johnny Storm. The job, Michael Chiklis as the Thing was a good casting and it worked out well, but they're almost going for a weird horror tone in that new one, and then they didn't leave enough time. They don't become the Fantastic Four until about 40 or 50 minutes in.
Yes.
They were going through all and they make the getting of their powers not a joyous thing, but a scary thing. And I get it. Okay, if I turned into a rock without any control, that would be creepy. But, and then that's about when I was like, this movie's going nowhere. And it's, we're an hour and something in, and we had another event going, and I'm like, I'm ready to bounce now. And the person who come with me was like, okay, we just left. And it was a screening. I was like, okay, I won't review the movie. I'll catch another screening of it. And then when I went to do so, the guy who had even set the screening up told me, he was like, Nathan, you didn't. He's like, I wouldn't even bother. You didn't miss anything. There was 20 minutes left after you. So I didn't officially review that movie, but and then when I finally caught it, it was like, it looked ugly. It just looked ugly.
Yeah.
But I think there's an opportunity here, and I think that's what WandaVision is kind of revealing, is they're telling a story. They're kind of they're expanding this relationship that Wanda and Vision are having, because that was my favorite part of. I did not care much for Age of Ultron, honestly, except for the Wanda. I liked Ultron, and I liked the Wanda and Vision interaction. Yep. And you kept feeling that was getting stymied through all the rest of it. So I still don't know this is exactly the Wanda and Vision kind of interaction I want, but I'm hopeful that if this does become a regular show, that they'll be able to interact outside of this artifice, So I think I'm very happy with it. I do think it's a different thing than The Mandalorian. It's not. Marvel Universe didn't need re-energizing the way Star Wars did. It just needed a little bit of reorganizing. And I think that's the shrewd thing that Disney's been doing with these shows. They've been using them not just to give you a good show. They've been trying to use them for a purpose, a kind of franchise purpose. And that seems to be what they're doing here. They're aligning some pieces that otherwise they'd have to do through standalone films. And honestly, there's nothing here that suggests how this is connected to the new Doctor Strange movie, except that we know that it is because I think they've said it is.
Right.
But really, other than knowing that Scarlet Witch and others have interacted with Doctor Strange before, but what's the name of the next Doctor Strange movie? This is where I go back to the concept of these being the characters they are. Like it's Doctor Strange in a multiverse of madness. Yes. So that's telling, I think. So man, that's basically our episode, isn't it?
I know, right? Yeah. We've got an hour in, so
yeah. Maybe we can mention a couple. I got to head out here in about 10 minutes, but maybe we can mention a couple quick, like our recommendations, maybe for good Valentine's Day viewing or movies, and or even shows, and then we can pick this up next time and we can go into more detail because there's a lot of stuff out. I mean, I've seen a lot of the new stuff that's on HBO Max and the TV shows, and the DC shows are about to start back up. Arrow ended last year, but the Flash is about to start back up, and the new Superman show is about to start back up.
Yes, I'm excited for that one. I'm really excited for that one.
I am too, because my kids finally got into the Flash and they watched it all, and I had stopped watching Flash around I think I talked to you recently around season 5 or something.
Yeah.
And season 4 actually. And so then we caught back up and we got into it. But then the thing that's been happening on DC for the past few years is they do these crossover episodes that go through all the shows. And anyone, even if you're not necessarily a fan of these shows, this Arrowverse, the Crisis on Infinite Earths was excellent. It was about 5 episodes long.
Yeah.
And it started in the Flash, but man, it gave you exactly the feeling of reading comics, and in those comic crossovers they used to do. And they brought in everything. And when I mean everything, I mean, here's a DC show on TV on WB, and they're bringing in references to Smallville, not just references, the actors.
Yeah.
They're bringing in Kevin Conroy from the Batman the Animated Series as a psychopathic future Batman. I mean, the Burt Ward shows up as Robin, and
there's a reference to Michael Keaton as
Robert Wool, who plays Knox, is sitting on a bench in a park. These worlds all exist out there. There's a point when the Grant Gustin Flash meets the Ezra Miller Flash from the DC cinematic world, and so. If you enjoy that kind of thing, I think you'll really like it. And if you like those shows, but it actually ended the Arrowverse on, I think these shows tend to end on not strong notes. And I think it actually gave that world, which I wasn't a big fan of the Arrow show. I love the Flash, but I think it gave that character's arc a nice conclusion, Yeah. And it was kind of a smart thing to conclude it in the midst of one of these giant, universe altering sort of storylines, as opposed to just here's the last episode where they fought a random guy and retired or died.
Right. Something a little more going on here. So.
And I also got to say, I kind of like the John Cryer Lex Luthor a little bit. He's not what I would have expected. He's almost like Elmer Fudd Lex Luthor, but he's growing on me.
Right.
Have you seen it, Nathan?
I have seen parts of it. So like I've seen different scenes that were pulled from the Crisis on Infinite Earths. So
they did a nice
send
off for the Tom Welling Superman. I thought
I did see that whole setup, and I did enjoy that piece of it. So. Yes,
and they bring Brandon Routh. Brandon Routh's been in the show, but he bring him back as the Kingdom Come Superman.
Yep,
as the Superman that is technically also. You remember Superman Returns was actually a sequel to the Christopher Reeve. So he is
Superman. Yeah,
it's kind of so as a comic book fan, you're kind of like geeking out over some of that, but they handle it well. They tell a nice story. That's pretty good. So how about you, romantic date night, good movies, go to for Valentine's Day?
Yeah, I mean one of the go-tos that we will do is Pride and Prejudice, but I call it the real one with Colin Firth and Elizabeth Eel.
The real one. It's not Pride and Prejudice and Zombies.
Yeah. And it's not the Keira Knightley one, which was fine, but like for those who aren't aware, this is like a 5.5 hour version of Pride and Prejudice. But it is one that Joy and I will sit down and we will watch together. We both.
It's fantastic.
It is,
no doubt.
Yeah,
I will say I consider both the real version because I adore the 2005 version. I think it was cinematically, it's obviously stronger because it was cinematic and the other's a TV show. I thought though that Knightley was actually someone who I kind of scoffed at originally. I thought she was very good in the role. I think. There's an actor in there, Matthew McFadden, who doesn't get really. I feel like he should have been a bigger star than he has been.
Yeah,
and he's there as Darcy. He's not the Colin Firth. No, I get that. But I think that's also, and Donald Sutherland as their dad is just awesome. So I think it's an excellent version too. To me, they're both great. It's just the question: do you have 2 hours or do you have 5 hours?
Right. Yeah. No, and I think that's fair. I mean, I would edge the Colin Firth one up there above this one.
No, I would say ultimately that one is the better version.
Yeah.
Or it's a better telling
of the.
I don't know. It's hard because I don't think I would even say that. It's maybe the more preferred one. If you're the Jane Austen Uber fan, that's the preferred one because it gets all facets and crannies and nooks of the story in there.
But again,
I would say that
it is super long. I mean, you do have to sit down and, it is.
2005 version has all the things you'd want from a cinematic version, which is it's got the chemistry between the characters. It's got beautiful cinematography. It has a fantastic score that we play the soundtrack all the time in the house. I mean, it is dynamite in all of those elements. But I do agree. I think ultimately, like, which is if you can only watch one of them, I don't know. But hey, there's so many versions of Pride and Prejudice out there. I do think these two are the best ones.
Yeah.
And Pride and Prejudice and Zombies is all right if you want a couple hours of silly fun. Have you seen that?
I have not seen that yet. No, that is the whole like zombie take on things is something that I've wanted to go back and watch. Didn't they do like an Abraham Lincoln Zombies or Vampires?
Vampire Hunter. Don't bother with that. That's pretty terrible.
Oh,
this is not a great movie, but it's kind of amusing. But yes. Well, I was thinking way back. We were talking. I recently did an episode with some guys that talking about horror movies, and they remember that the movie that beat everybody to the punch was back in the '90s. Remember, there's a movie called My Boyfriend's Back.
Yes.
Like Bob Balaban directed, and it was like it has like Philip Seymour Hoffman and Matthew McConaughey, and I want like a whole bunch of different people in it.
Yeah, wasn't that based off of a comic though?
No. It didn't. I don't know that one particularly. It might have been. If it was an indie comic. I mean, there was one later. They did one a few years ago that I think was, but I'm not sure if that one was or not. I'd have to go back. I have just memories of seeing it as a kid, but I remember My Boyfriend Back being pretty silly. I don't know. Yeah. I'm sure you could it's probably for free somewhere.
Right.
I would think.
Yeah.
But I remember it being a fun movie. I don't know. I'm not. It was that era of like Encino Man and the movie version of Buffy the Vampire Slayer. Those kind of goofball, not horror, but kind of horror and sci-fi adjacent movies.
Yes,
that were made to kind of cash in on the teen like interest in that sort of stuff. There was another one around the same time as Steve Buscemi called Ed and His Dead Mother.
Yes.
But again, if you're looking for zombies and dead mothers, check out Dead Alive, which is a legitimate romantic movie about a shy guy and his would-be girlfriend and a domineering mother. It just also involves zombies getting run over with a lawnmower strapped to a guy's chest for about 20 minutes. So, and it's one of the goriest things you'll ever see. So gauge your date on that one.
Right.
And we like to go back to a lot of the classic, there's a lot of classic and older films, I think, that really work well in that vein. But some of those we watch with the kids, it's funny too, what considered classic to my kids is like, oh, can we watch The Princess Bride again?
Right.
Absolute classic. I'm looking forward. I kind of want to watch we really like, there's a great 40s version of Beauty and the Beast, actually, a French version. It's in black and white called Belle La Bête. That's really, really good. If you've seen the Disney version a million times and want something a little different.
Yeah.
I think we're going to watch Ever After with the kids because they haven't seen that yet. And honestly, to me, that's an underrated movie. I think that's a very good version of the Cinderella story. I thought Drew Barrymore was cute as a button in that movie. I thought Dougray Scott, another guy who never got his due, I feel like. I mean, he must be kicking himself hard for not taking that Wolverine role back in the day. But he's good in this movie.
Yes.
He's very good.
Yes.
And he's not the guy that would be a typical romantic. He's a little burlier, a little bit more rugged and not necessarily in the ways that Hollywood wants, He seems a little bit more like a bricklayer's son than a prince, but he's good. And then the idea that they reconfigure the fairy godmother as Da Vinci.
Yeah. No, it was a very fun movie. It was a, cute, clever movie that, worked on a lot of different levels that I think, I remember when it came out talking to my brother, and my brother had said it was, and he was not into like romantic movies at all. He said it was one of his favorite movies at the time that had come out. And so,
I think it was in my top 10 that year, 98, which I think was one of the best of recent memory, even though it's a recent, is what, like 20 some years
I know, right?
Now. But one of my favorite movie years, and that was definitely in the top 20 movies, I think, in my opinion. Angelica Houston's really good too as the quote unquote wicked stepmother. And I think what works there is that she's believably wicked, not wicked, not like movie wicked. She's believably wicked. She's more like looking out for her own than she is purposefully. She's a little bit, but it's bitterness based off of human hurt. You know what I mean?
Right.
As much as I did enjoy the Kenneth Branagh take, I thought the Disney remake of Cinderella was actually very good that they did. But I feel like it is indebted to this one because all of the choices they made in that Cinderella, they did introduce the fantasy back in, but most of those choices were choices that the Ever After Cinderella made.
Yes.
That they played with. So I think they're both good, but to me, that's a good one. And then you've got, there's lots of great classic love stories out there. I think movies that you can see, like Top Gun, right?
Yeah.
No, I'm just kidding. But no.
Actually,
I'm thinking much.
Another one of our favorite ones that we will go to is Return to Me with Dave Duchovny and Minnie Driver.
See, that's a fun one too, and I like those kinds of. I like making these kinds of suggestions because I feel like they're movies that have sort of fallen by the wayside a little bit. You know, I think Ever After is a movie people are talking about on a regular basis. Nor is Return to Me, and I'm glad you mentioned Return to Me because I've been watching through the X-Files. I've been doing a series on Phantom Galaxy, and I was just reflecting about like kind of the bad movie choices that David Duchovny made for the most part in the wake of that of the X-Files. He took that time off and he did a couple movies, and one of them we were watching. I was watching with the kids. It's not terrible, but it's not great. Was Evolution.
Oh yes,
yes. Yeah. Again, I'm like, this should have been so much better than it was. But Return to Me, I completely forgot about. I love Minnie Driver actually, and I think the thing is now Minnie Driver, when you see what Minnie Driver is in, what she's done, she doesn't necessarily pop up in your mind as sort of the kind of cute lead, although she was back in the 90s. You know? And there's a couple of movies she did, but this is a good movie. I like this one, and it's got one of my favorite character actors, Robert Loggia, is in it, and I like him a lot. But she was in what is the movie? She was in a Circle of Friends. Did you ever see Circle of Friends?
I can't remember because there was a
95?
period of time where we had Netflix, like their rental service, for a while.
Yeah.
And we just went through a mini driver phase. I can't remember if that was one of the
This
ones
was
we
an
did or
Irish
not.
film, and it
Okay.
takes place in Dublin in like the 50s. And it was probably one of her like debut movies. The other guy who was in it, who's faded into obscurity pretty well, was Chris O'Donnell.
Oh, okay.
So it's Chris O'Donnell, a mini driver. It's a very good. It's more of a teen movie. It's a PG-13, but it's a very good movie. And then Gross Point Blank with John Cusack.
Yes.
Did you ever see that?
Yes,
The hitman
that is a
goes back.
great movie.
Yeah, and that's got a romantic undercurrent to it. I mean, there's other things going on, like I'm trying to figure out where do I hide a dead body at a high school reunion. But I definitely think that one is also worth seeing. But yeah, that's a great call. We were talking the other day when we were talking about like horror, but like kind of like the older related movies. And someone mentioned a great romantic ghost movie from back in the day with Gene Tierney and Ray Milland in it called The Ghost of Mrs. Murr. I don't know if you ever saw that movie.
I didn't.
But that's kind of a fun one. If you have somebody who's into the older movies, that has the kind of fantasy element. That's a lot of fun. Movies like A Philadelphia Story are great, and there's a lot of stuff out there that's good. And the trick sometimes is trying to find one you can watch with families. So sometimes you're not looking for a family-oriented romantic movie, and so there's a good amount of stuff out there. But yeah, that's about what I have. Do you have anything else, Nathan?
The only thing, other things that I'll mention, Much Ado About Nothing, the Kenneth Branagh version, is a great really one to watch. And then, Henry V, I'll mention there's a lot more battle and action going on, but like at the end of it, you have, kind of that quiet love scene between him and Emma Thompson. I haven't seen the new one with Timothy Chalamet, but I'm thinking of the one with Kenneth Branagh back in 1986 or 89, whenever it was.
Yes, and I haven't seen that one either yet. The one that you're talking about, the newer one, but
yeah. But Shakespeare has a lot of great, fun love story. You have Midsummer's Night's Dream. And so there are a lot of great fun, ones that Shakespeare does, and so I would recommend even some of those to get some going way back. You talk about classic, you don't get much more classic than that.
No, that's very true, and then of course the benefit with the Shakespeare is that they keep making them, so you have a lot of different ones to choose from.
Yes.
And then, of course, you do have, going back to Jane Austen for a minute, you've got a lot of great versions. You also have, let's talk about Emma for a minute, because you have Clueless,
yes,
which is a really fun and a great kind of movie, if particular people haven't seen it. I also want to say, I just saw not long ago on Max, and I don't know if you've seen it yet, Nathan, or what you guys think of it. If you have seen it, there is a brand new version of Emma that actually PG. It just came out this year. Have you seen it? Or last year? It came out 2020. Anya Taylor-Joy played Emma, and it had a very kind of candy-coated coloring look to it. Like, it was very vibrant. Have you seen it?
Have not seen it yet. That might be one that we check out this weekend.
I think, again, everyone's got their own like a favorite. Jen had a particular like BBC version that she
is that really the one with Kate Beckinsale?
No, I don't know. Beckinsale wasn't Emma. The BBC's done like 20 Emmas, but this one, the only thing I really remember is that Michael Gambon played the father in it.
Oh, okay.
And I can't remember the actress who played Emma, but it was not Kate Beckinsale. I've seen the Kate Beckinsale one. This new Emma, Bill Nighy, who was of course played Davy Jones, is the father in this version, and I liked it a lot. I actually thought it was one of the better versions. I think Jan preferred the BBC one a little bit, but again, you get that issue of time, and a 2 hour and maybe a couple minute movie, I'm not expecting the same sort of delving into depth. But I would recommend it. I thought it was excellent, one of the better movies of last year. A couple others too. If you are, we talked about the kind of jokingly like Pride, Prejudice, and Zombies and all that. A really fun movie that came out this year was called Love and Monsters. That was probably one of the big surprises for me last year. I don't know if you've seen it yet, Nathan, but it it takes that kind of feel that you'd want from like a Zombieland,
Mm-hmm.
but it builds in. It's really made for a younger audience, not necessarily really young kids, although the monsters and what happens in the tone of the film are just gentle enough, not super gentle, but just gentle enough that if you've got kids that are used to sort of like a kid who can watch the Lord of the Rings movies could watch Love and Monsters.
Yeah. Yeah.
And in fact, this is more tame than the Lord of the Rings, the Peter Jackson Lord of the Rings movies. And but it deals with a kid who a certain kind of apocalypse has happened. Now the world is overrun by giant monsters, creatures that were recently benign have now grown to giant size and are stomping around. So it has a feel like the old Harryhausen movies. And you have a kid living in a bunker that remembers the days when, he was about to have his first kiss and bam, the monsters attack. And his love kind of moved across the country. And now he's in a bunker and he can communicate with her, but he's going to have to cross the wasteland with his dog to kind of find her. And along the way, he comes across like a lot of great characters like Michael Rooker, who played Yondu in the Guardians of the Galaxy. He and this tough little girl, he kind of encounters them. And so it's a lot of fun. If you liked Zombieland, but you're someone who's like, you could show it to kids. Zombieland, of course, had a lot of content you can't really show to kids.
Right.
Love and Monsters, I think you'll really, and now it's one that you can rent from like a Redbox or rent for $4 or $5. So a bit ago, it was about $20. I bought it at that time frame and watched it with kids, and I wasn't disappointed then. But you can get it for a couple dollars or rent it from a Redbox now. So I think that would be a really good one, particularly if you're trying to you want a kind of romantic theme movie, and it's a movie that you'd like to also be able to watch as a family. Love and Monsters is a good call.
Nice. Well, that was great, Nathan. I'm so glad we were able to get together and do this recording. A lot more about WandaVision, but hey, you know what? I think it was worth it.
That always happens to us. I mean, it wasn't 2 hours about WandaVision, so there's something to be said.
Something to be said about that. And then we got, I'll have this edited and up and released either later tonight or very early tomorrow, so that way it's there for Thanksgiving. So
perfect. Thanksgiving is the most important holiday on February.
Valentine's Day. Still early in the morning.
Dude, I say stuff like that all the time. My bigger thing that I always like, it's like when you completely blank on somebody's name, which I've been doing a lot lately. So hopefully it's not.
I haven't seen you in
family
so
members.
long. I forgot.
So thankfully it's not family members. I'm thinking of more like. Maybe back in the day, I thought of movie characters as family members, but no.
Right.
It's trying to come up with for whatever reason, I blanked on Alfred Molina's name the other day. I was talking about a movie and I just could not bring it to
Yeah. No.
And most people think, well, that's fine. I never remember Alfred Molina either, but I always did. So I don't know what's going on. Like you said, I'm the human IMDb. If you try to get me to remember a date, I'll do it by what movie came out that weekend.
Right.
So,
right.
It is disconcerting with some of that. Takes a second to recall. Yeah, it was great fun. I had a good time.
Awesome. Well, until the next time, Nathan, we just rock the Casbah.
Please go to 11.